There are a lot of myths and misunderstandings that patients have around the need and use of insulin therapy, particularly in type 2 diabetes. So it's important for physicians and patients alike to understand where and when insulin therapy is appropriate and how insulin can help keep patients healthy and prevent the devastating long-term complications that we know will likely happen in patients with poorly controlled diabetes over time. When it comes to treating type 2 diabetes, we always will focus on lifestyle because it can be of benefit at any stage in an individual's diabetic career, so to speak. But in truth, most people with diabetes will need therapeutic interventions, and that will include oral agents such as pills that will help produce more insulin or allow the insulin to be more effective. But penultimately, in many patients, they do require insulin because of the progressive nature of reduction in insulin production. That's the natural history of type 2 diabetes. When we get patients started on insulin, we'll often start using once a day bedtime long-acting insulin. And our goal is to try and get all the daytime sugars in control. But sometimes this is not adequate, and we have to introduce an additional insulin therapeutic approach. And that means introducing short-acting insulin or pre-meal insulin to help get the blood sugars down to target. In the IMPROVE study, it was on an average of 9 years before insulin therapy was introduced. And we noted in the study that the overall blood sugar control was quite poor, with the average A1C value being at 9.5% when patients were finally started on insulin. So we found that, in fact, 3/4 of patients, even 1 year after starting on insulin, were still not being managed to the recommended target. In other words, there was clinical inertia or not enough intensification of the insulin therapy to get patients down to target. And we saw that for the majority of these patients, that was still the case even 4 years after starting on insulin therapy. So one of the challenges, particularly in primary care, is the confusion as to how to introduce mealtime insulin. And recent studies have really suggested a very simplified approach. And that is, once patients are established on their long-acting or basal insulin therapy, and it's clear that daytime sugars are still creeping up, particularly towards the end of the day, the easiest and simplest approach is to introduce a single short-acting insulin with the largest meal, starting at a relatively modest dose. And in most studies, it's recommended that patients start on 4 units. The recent publication of the stepwise study identified a very simplified approach to introducing mealtime insulin. When long-acting insulin was failing to control glucose levels or blood sugar levels in patients, a stepwise approach identifying first the largest meal of the day and introducing a small amount of mealtime insulin was introduced.